as everyone joins, then we'll just continue. We just want to welcome everyone to join our second episode today, which is going to be the physical aspect of the 4 chambers of vitality, which is so exciting to share in. And I think we wanted to also just touch on and kind of chat about ascension as well, because a lot of people don't really understand ascension and what that essentially means for both their spiritual practice and their physical bodies, and how you can marry the two. A lot of people that I know, even within the spiritual community, don't even know about ascension. So I think that's a really good place to start. And obviously I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but just to give everybody an understanding of, you know, why we might be feeling the way that we do, and why all of a sudden it's come out of nowhere and we're going, whoa, what is this? I've never felt this way before. So obviously ascension happens on two levels, which is obviously your spiritual ascension, which is deeply personal, and then the collective ascension, which is deeply physical. So the physical aspect of ascension happens both to Gaia, to Mother Earth, and obviously to our physical bodies as beings on this plane. And it happens to all souls. So it's not just human beings that are ascending. It is our pets, our dogs, our cats, our trees, our gardens, anything that is a soul in this experience right now, which is mind-blowing in itself to even imagine. And what happens is our central sun, our sun, there's many suns, but they all feed off of each other to allow for our sun to emit these solar flares. And every time a solar flare is emitted from the sun, it comes into our atmosphere and it ultimately filters down into our physical bodies. And at that level within our physical bodies, it is going to shake up our DNA. It's going to upgrade our DNA. And ultimately, in order for us to process light into our physical bodies, we've got to make space. So what the light does when it comes into our bodies, it allows for density within our bodies, stored density, to shift out. But in order for that density to shift out, it's like shaking a Coke can. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be messy, because all of the density within our physical body that is stored is all things that are programs. It is trauma. It is limiting beliefs. It is all the pain that we've suppressed. So of course, when the light comes in, there's an element of needing to make space for the light to come into our bodies. And what do we have to do when that happens? We have to look at it. We have to make the space. We have to become the container to allow for that light to come in. So obviously that's the physical ascension, both on the earth and for ourselves. So the same thing is happening to Mother Earth. She's having all of this light come in, and she's also having to make space for all of this light. And she's also shifting a lot of density within her atmosphere in terms of pollution and things like that we've obviously caused being here. So that is the physical ascension side of things. And then the spiritual ascension side of things is when this light comes into our bodies, and I touched on it just now, we have to make space. We have to be the container to hold all of this light within our physical bodies. And that means that we really have to face off with ourselves. It means that we have to go through a cycle of purging. And very often, if you are not kind of accustomed to doing shadow work and inner work, you go through something which is called the dark night of the soul, where I'm sure, Emma, you've experienced it. I've definitely experienced it, where you literally feel like it's the end of the world. You feel terrible, you feel depressed, you feel anxious, you don't understand why, everything falls apart around you, and you really just don't get it. And that is the universe's way of saying, you need to look at yourself. And ultimately, you have no choice. It's so, you're in the thick of it so much that you literally have no way out other than through. So that's very much what the dark night of the soul is it's this very, very deep purging of trauma, limiting beliefs, and all of those dense emotions that need safe passage through you in order to embody the light coming in. So that is the spiritual aspect. Obviously, what happens at the end of this is that your body then becomes acclimated to holding all of the light that you can possibly imagine, getting rid of all of the density within your body, and you obviously become in alignment to a higher frequency. You are embodying higher frequencies. And as we start to embody higher frequencies, what happens? We get closer and closer to experiencing bliss and euphoria and heaven on earth, if you want to call it that. And the same happens when the earth goes through that process as well. It upgrades to allowing it to shift into new earth. And ultimately, this all ends, well, it doesn't end because it's the beginning, it's always cyclical, with the solar flash, which is the last blast of light into Gaia, into our physical bodies, to ascend us to our next experience. So that is ascension. Very briefly, there is a lot more to it. Emma, I don't know if you want to add anything, if I've forgotten anything.
No, not really. Thank you, Candace, and thank you everybody for joining us live or watching the recording. As far as the ascension process goes, I feel like it's just a continuous learning, and trying to understand what we are having to integrate.
Yes.
Yeah, and the dark night of the soul, absolutely. And I believe that there are many of us who are having several of those, whereas a few decades ago, I understood from the psychology that it's like one of those in a lifetime. And more I'm hearing that there could be several of those. Yeah. So it's not unusual to feel like you have a few of those dark, long extended periods.
And I also feel that as you become more kind of acclimated to the light, you're aware when you're going through these cycles of the dark night of the soul. So it doesn't feel as intense as it did, say, the first time that you went through the dark night of the soul. And you also start to recognize it as a moment of growth, because obviously when you go through it, it's expansive and it is growth, but it is hugely uncomfortable. In any sphere where you're uncomfortable, you're going to grow, but it is uncomfortable. So I think as you kind of go through these processes, you become kind of better used to going through them. And for me, at least, I don't feel like they last as long. I kind of allow them to come in and I look at it and I see the opportunity for growth, and I can move through it with a lot more grace and a lot more ease, which I think is beautiful. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be. It's not a process that's supposed to get harder. It's definitely a process that is meant to become easier as we go along, which is awesome. Obviously, today we are going to be spending quite a bit of time talking about the physical aspect of the 4 chambers of vitality. And I would honestly say the physical chamber and the spiritual chamber are 2 of my most favorite chambers. So we are definitely going to be speaking about a chamber that I enjoy speaking about because it's so important. So Emma, I'm going to hand over to you just to lead us through the first part of the physical chamber.
Great. Thank you, Candace. So for those of you who don't know me, so my background is in nutrition and functional medicine and nutritional therapy, and always being really curious about how we can support the body in its attempt to get well or get better. But in the context of ascension, I've had to revisit a few of the theories that I was taught or that I thought were true. And as Candace mentioned, this process of ascension, or the ability to hold more light, will also almost force us to let go of limiting beliefs or outdated beliefs, and the same with nutrition and well-being. So in the realm of the physical chamber, as part of our series, I think the most important thing to understand is that we want to encourage each cell, each organ, each tissue, each bit of fiber, right down to the DNA, to be able to hold this higher vibration as it comes in. So that implies that we have to look at foods or meals, or even the water, the air that we breathe, the chemicals that we are exposed to, not just in daily life, but in our environment, and look at whether it can nourish us or whether it depletes us. So it's a complete review of how we look at the food that we choose. firstly, and not to talk about things that you should be depriving yourself of, but just becoming more aware of how things affect your body. Certain meals, do you feel a sense of vitality, or do you feel fatigued? So just, I think the first step is to start paying more attention, not so much with criticism and judgment, but more just with trying to get an insight and trying to observe so that you can make better choices. It's not always going to be the same for everybody, but I have noticed that in this process in the last few years, that more and more my body has become sensitive to certain things. The main foods being highly processed foods. Not that that is something that I've ever really felt drawn to, but I'm less and less able to even taste those. Sugar is one of those biggest toxins and poisons, and almost like a drug. And it definitely, for me, has become something that drops my vibration almost instantly. Gluten being wheat, rye, barley, and oats. Mainly because the way that it's grown has become something that a lot of people are not tolerating so well anymore. So just have a look at, and like I say, I'm starting with what to observe. Start looking at the foods that commonly make a part of your daily choices, and see how you feel when you eat those foods. So many of you have become so used to feeling unwell that you actually can't distinguish between this sense of vitality and well-being as opposed to feeling really depleted, tired, sad, all of those things. Then the next point I would like to focus on is then how do we choose foods that can help us raise our vibration, foods that carry a high frequency, meals that are nourishing for us. First of all, I feel that it's the way that something is produced or grown or manufactured. So you can imagine that the more steps there are in this process, the more the actual original vibration of this food has been changed. That's why something that has been grown organically and goes directly from farm to table will essentially have a much higher vibration compared to something that's not grown organically with love and integrity, and then gets transported into a factory where it's processed and things are added and taken out, and it comes out the other end on a shelf with an expiry date, perhaps even next year or the year after. And that type of food or meal will have very little vitality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's like the first thing that we can be mindful of when we want to become discerning about how to choose.
I also just want to add on from what you're saying, Emma, is that we've become a culture of calorie counting. And, it always makes me laugh how, very often we'll go, okay, I need to have a quarter of this and a half of this and a quarter of this on my plate. And, oh my goodness, I'm below 2,500 calories. So, I'm good to go for the day. But I think if people could shift their consciousness and their mind to rather calorie counting to vibration counting and frequency counting, and looking at that plate and going, is this low frequency? Is this high frequency? What can I swap out? What can I add in order to make this a nourishing experience? And it's crazy where our minds go, but we live in a world where it's just so full of distractions, and it's meant to be that way, because this process of ascension is about coming back into yourself, and it's not something that we are ever taught to do. So, and also just you know, what you were saying about not denying yourself the things that you desire, so and not holding judgment for that. So I had an experience, and this is very much interlinked with your emotions and why you consume certain things, and I'm going to chat about that just now. But it's that whole thing of, why am I choosing to consume this? Why am I sitting here with a bowl of carbohydrates and pasta? And I speak from experience. Not too long ago, literally this weekend, I had a weekend where I was sitting in very dense emotions, and all I wanted to do was put density into my body, because when we are feeling dense emotions and we're processing, we just want to put more density into our bodies because we want to feel solid. Because feeling our emotions and going into our light body feels too unfamiliar, and it feels too light, and it feels too unattainable. So what we do is we put density into our bodies to bring us solidly into our forms, because that's where we feel safe. We're not supposed to be inside the safety box where we can't escape from it. We're meant to be expanding. We're meant to be going outside of our physical bodies and experiencing our energy field. But when we're processing and we don't want to face that, we just go, okay, I'm going to eat pasta, and I'm going to eat carbohydrates, and I'm going to eat sugar, because it literally creates density in your body, so your emotions can't come up. It's a form of suppression. So I would really encourage all of our listeners right now to really think about, when you are eating something, what is the reason for it? Is it for vitality, or is it for suppression, or some other reason? And again, coping mechanisms. A lot of people will have eating challenges around the foods that they eat because it's a coping mechanism. When I feel this way, or when this happens, I do. You know, so to start looking at those things. But another thing that I want to add, again, it's not about having judgment. So this weekend, I was there with my bowls of pasta and my malva pudding. Everything you could possibly imagine of density this weekend was in my bowl. And I realized afterwards, because I felt awful when I ate it, I was like, I feel absolutely horrendous. What am I doing, Candace? You know, and in that moment, when I was able to actually step back and observe why I was doing this, I realized that so this weekend was 17 years since my mom passed away. And there was grief. There was layers and layers of grief that I didn't want to feel. So what did I do? I consumed and I consumed and I consumed to push that down, so that I didn't have to face those emotions. And it was only on Monday, when I was feeling so sluggish and so fatigued and going through my workout, that I realized, oh my goodness, that's what I did. And obviously bringing awareness into it, I can go, oh, okay, I see why I did that. That's okay. That's okay. And I can love myself through that process of now going, all right, Candace, we're feeling better today. Now we can face that grief because we're safe, you know? So I just want to encourage everybody not to hold judgment for themselves. We're here for an experience. It's not here to berate ourselves, deny ourselves. And also when we do that, we're lowering our vibration. So if we can have compassion and grace for ourselves and go, gosh, probably not the best choice, but it's also not the end of the world. Right now, I have an opportunity in this now moment to go, let me try and do something a bit better. Let me make a better choice, even if that is just drinking a glass of water. You know, it's not this big life-changing overhaul where when you get it wrong, we're doomed. Now we're done. Now we're never going to be the height of our ascension being because we stuffed up. You know, that's not it. But also what I do find is the more that we practice consciously consuming things, the easier it gets. So allow yourself to have those moments where you fall off the bandwagon. That's totally okay. But pick yourself up, look at it, allow the feelings to come up and pass through you, and then come back to making better choices. Because ultimately, the ego is what leads us into the choices of density, and the true self is what allows us to hold our vibration and look at things objectively and go, is this going to serve me? Is this bowl of pasta or is this chocolate bar right now going to serve me? And one last thing before I hand back to you, Emma, is very often at the moment, especially with the global climate and inflation, there are going to be many people that cannot afford to eat well. And I just want to encourage those people to understand that they are high beings of consciousness, which means that they have the power and the intention to change the effect that food has on their physical body. So if you are unable to obtain organic, free range, farm to table food, and it is what it is, and this is all you've got, then I would really encourage you to look at doing blessings over your food, bringing your vibration into the food and allowing it to be blessed to be of the highest frequency into your physical body. That at the minimum is a really beautiful practice to ensure that whatever you are eating comes into your body in the right frequency, and you yourself are capable of changing that frequency. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that one, Emma. I'm just going to hand back to you now because I know you had a bit more to add about the physical chambers.
Yeah, thank you, Candace. So that was going to be my next point about what do we do if we can't buy organic? And that is the reality for many. Number one, again, just going back to choosing food in its most natural state. So anything that we can buy that comes like that from nature, obviously will have a more alive vibration compared to something that's been processed. That goes for eggs, vegetables, fruit, meat, anything else. But then in that context, see if you can buy something with minimal exposure to hormones or chemicals if possible. If not, you need to now look at, if I buy a tray of vegetables, carrots, beetroot, tomatoes, lemons, pumpkin, broccoli, apples or berries, sweet potato, and it's not organically grown, maybe finding a way of cleaning it, not just rinsing it under the tap, because that won't get rid of the sprays. Using something like vinegar to soak your produce in, to help remove that chemical layer that sits on the skin. So that is as far as sort of just when you bring it home, cleaning it. And then when you prepare, the way that a meal is prepared already changes the way that it enters the body. So if you're making a simple scrambled egg or vegetable soup or chopping an apple, and you're doing it with love and appreciation for this piece of food, it already start carrying that vibration of appreciation. And then before you eat your meal, whether it's a salad or a scrambled egg, if you look at that food and you notice the colors and you really appreciate it and you give it a blessing of gratitude, thank you for nourishing me. Thank you for nourishing my body on every level. Thank you for giving me a nourishment that will help me restore the vitality in my cells. And you can make it your own. So make it a sincere blessing. But by blessing every meal, we're already changing that very much. So that now by the time it enters the body and we start to break that food down and assimilate, it's a vibrational difference. And that'll make a huge difference. And the same with water. We know from the research with Dr. Emoto that simply by giving thanks to a glass of water can change the way in which that water carries that vibration. So I often say to my clients, the quality of the water that you consume is really important. I prefer to suggest that we use a filter on our tap to help remove any chemicals that have been added. But even after that, you can perhaps on your water bottle or your water jug write a blessing, love and gratitude. You can perhaps add crystals into the jug or into the container, so that every time you take a sip of that water, you're actually vibrationally nourishing yourself as well.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful, Emma. And you know, as you're speaking about it, I'm already just filled with so much joy in knowing that something as simple as having gratitude allows us to raise our frequency and the frequency of that which we're consuming, which, I mean, how easy is that? It's not an unattainable thing. And, you know, that's, I think my biggest thing is that we are ordinary human beings. There's nothing that sets us apart from anybody else. We're all the same, soul to soul. We're all the same. And this journey is not supposed to be complicated. It's not supposed to be difficult. And I know a lot of people out there sometimes feel like, well, I can't do organic and I can't do free range, so I'm doomed. I'm doomed. There's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to raise my frequency. You know, I'm doomed. And, you know, that's not the case at all. It's really, really, really not the case at all. There's many very practical things that we can do to raise our frequency that doesn't cost anything, and it certainly doesn't cost time. It's just about being mindful and remembering to do those things, because they're freely available to us, if you're willing to actually just notice what your patterns of behavior are and slightly changing, for example, the way you prepare your food or your thanks before your meal, you know. So I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's a really powerful, simple way of supporting yourself and raising your frequency. So it's very, very cool. I know that you wanted to touch on fasting as well. So I think we should go there before moving on to the lymphatic system.
Yes. So one of my big passions has been introducing the concept of fasting. For health reasons, but also because it somehow is one of those miracle tools where when we remove food, we become so much more in touch with our bodies. So it's not a symbol of deprivation. It's actually almost like I choose to go without, not because I want to restrict myself or limit myself, but I want to be more in touch with what my body is saying. And then, yes, when you stay without food for 24 hours or 36 hours or 3 or 5 days, depending on how comfortable you are with fasting, it's like the whole body restores and recalibrates, and we become much closer to our spiritual experience. And we know for thousands and thousands of years, communities and societies have used fasting as a ritual of spiritual practice. So sometimes when our nervous systems become quite overwhelmed, or where we've had perhaps a weekend of eating a lot of sugar, a lot of pasta, a simple way to just recalibrate would be to perhaps do a day of fasting, just drinking water, some herbal teas, etc. And then I just wanted to also touch on the work of David Hawkins, the map of consciousness that I often use with clients as well. So he uses the idea of different emotional states or levels of consciousness having a different vibration. And I want to apply that to how we eat as well. So, for example, shame and guilt have a very, very low vibration compared to something like joy or peace. So it's in that mindfulness that we can incorporate when we choose food, when we prepare food, and when we enjoy food, that we can make the difference between, so vibrationally, for example, I think he said shame is on a level 20 versus joy, which is on a vibration of 540. So imagine when you're feeling really down, really sluggish, really overwhelmed, and you can just drop in these nutrient bombs of joy, how much difference it can make on a cellular level.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Emma. And also about when you are in those lower density spaces, actually making a conscious choice about whether or not you should be actually deciding to eat a meal right now. Because I know when I'm in those lower vibrations, my go-to is not going to be things of high vibration, because you're not in alignment to it. We are only going to attract that which we're in alignment to. So if I'm having a real down and out depressed day, then my vibration is automatically going to match like for like with something of that nature. So your pastas, your chocolates, your processed foods, your grains, your glutens, that sort of thing. So I think for me, the biggest thing is around the time that you would want to have a meal is really taking time, even if it's just 10 minutes, to raise your vibration and bring yourself into awareness with your consciousness and go, okay, I'm due to consume something. I don't want to put density into my body. How can I shift my mindset? What can I do right now to raise my frequency so that the choice I make about what I eat is of a high vibration, you know? And then it does become easier to sit down and eat a bowl of salad or something that is of higher frequency, vitality and nourishment. But it's not something that we think about, because when we are having a bad day, it's instantaneous gratification. We want to go to the fridge and take something and eat it now. So making a PB&J sandwich is a go-to when you're in a rush, when you're feeling rubbish, and it's a quick fix. You know, I generally find meals of higher frequency take longer to prepare because it's a lot more preparation. It's not this instant gratification. But there's a beauty in that as well, as being able to take time to prepare your meal. You know, we live in a world where everything has to be fast food and quick, 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 quick. But ultimately, we need to slow down and realize we're investing into ourselves. And the greatest gift to ourselves right now is nourishing our bodies for ascension, because ascension happens at the physical level. And if we're not doing that, then we are going to struggle with things like ascension symptoms. There are so many of them, because as our bodies acclimate to all this light coming in and we're purging all this density, we're going to feel things like fatigue and anxiety and sleep disruption. And when you then go and throw low density foods into your body on top of that, you can be sure that your body's going to be working overtime to now acclimate to the light, and you're going to feel pretty rubbish. So at this point, I would just say to everybody that do whatever you can to make this process easier. So if it means that you reduce the amount that you eat once a day to ensure that when you do have that meal time, that you're in a space of higher frequency, to ensure that the nourishment you bring in is of high vibration, then do that. Do what serves you greatest, because now is really not the time to be putting any more pressure on our already like dysregulated and overwhelmed systems, because it is overwhelming. We're human beings. And on that note, something that's also very important to do, and I would say is probably one of the most important things alongside nourishment and diet, is to look at your lymphatic system. So unlike your circulatory system, your blood is obviously pumped by your heart. Your lymphatic system it moves and flows within your body with movement. So in order to ensure that your lymphatic system is flowing with ease and grace, and now your lymphatic system is responsible for the movement of your emotions in and out of your physical body. Now, with ascension and the light coming in, what are we doing? We're moving dense energies, we're moving dense emotions, we're moving dense trauma out of our physical body. So our lymphatic system is incredibly important in moving those emotions out of your body when the light is coming in. And when your lymphatic system is blocked or stagnant, because you are not moving, because you are not doing things to support it, it's going to make that process of allowing the expansion of light into your body to happen. So a couple of things that I would recommend in order to ensure that your lymphatic system is functioning optimally. Really simple things. You can incorporate lymphatic massage into your daily routine. There's so many YouTube videos online that you can watch where you can do it for 5 minutes a day. If that is not your thing, then you can obviously look at something like dry brushing. So I've got my dry brush here. Dry brushing, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, I find really, really helps to support my lymphatic system. Other things, if you are a more physical person, then things like skipping, jumping on a trampoline, doing jumping jacks, headstands, any kind of exercise where you are moving is really good for your body. If you're a more of a feminine energy in terms of the way that you like to exercise, then Qigong, yoga, stretching is going to be really beneficial for you. Other things that are really brilliant for the lymphatic system is obviously breath work. which is beautiful, as well as fasting, which Emma's already mentioned, staying hydrated, ensuring that you have enough water intake, and also just getting enough rest. One of the greatest things that we can do at the moment with Ascension is rest, if you are able to. Although there is sleep disruption, honoring what your body needs intuitively is going to serve you so well. So if that means that you excuse yourself from social events for a while to in order to be able to go to bed earlier, or to not be around people because you're overwhelmed, then do it. Honor yourself. Self-honoring right now is got to be one of the biggest priorities that you make for yourself, because it is just so incredibly important. And as you regulate your lymphatic system, you're going to find that processing and alchemizing emotions is just going to become so much easier. And ultimately that's what you want, because if you think about when you are in a place of density and all you want to do is curl up in that fetal position and tuck your head under a pillow and stay in bed, you're hunching your body, you are stopping the flow of your lymphatic system, you are holding on to those emotions and that density. And then ultimately in that place, you probably want to eat junk as well. You are literally standing in your own way. So even if you are not a big exerciser, you can take a 5-minute walk. You can, in bed, first thing when you wake up, stretch into your body. This will already start to support your lymphatic system. So I'm not saying that you need to do anything that requires a great amount of effort or change to your everyday routine. I'm certainly not someone that you will find at the gym for 5 hours of the day. But being able to be outside, playing with my dogs in the sunshine, well, that's what I do to support my lymphatic system. It's not about overcomplicating and making your life busy. This is actually about simplifying your life, to enable these energies that are coming in to integrate better. And I mean, in comparison to a year ago, we used to have light codes coming in maybe once a week, once every 3 days at a maximum. Now it is all day, every day. So it's incredibly important to make sure that you are integrating. This is definitely a season of integration and making sure that you are doing what you need to do to support yourself. And Emma, I know within your practice as well, you're seeing a lot of people struggling with diseases and illness and sleep deprivation. People are struggling in a lot of ways right now. And 99.9% of the time, I would say it is actually ascension symptoms. People aren't aware that they can actually support themselves in a very easy way, to allow these energies to acclimate and integrate. So they are really struggling with ascension symptoms. So I think bringing awareness to, is this ascension symptoms or is this an ailment, also helps. And what I would say, the difference between an ascension symptom and something else is the fact that an ascension symptom should integrate within a couple of days, a maximum of, I would say, 3 days. If after 3 days you are still struggling, then there's obviously something underlying within your physical body that needs addressing. So what would you say about that, Emma? What are you seeing a lot of at the moment?
So I just wanted to mention something that I haven't had a chance to talk about. What I'm seeing a lot is mineral deficiencies, and that is not just because of ascension. That is just a reality. Our soils are depleted, foods are not grown the way they are growing. So people feeling quite flat and tired, or just like they can't seem to come out of that feeling of sluggishness, is that they're lacking minerals. So we don't all have to take tablets in order to give our minerals. If we add a pinch of Himalayan salt to your jug of water, especially your first glass of water in the morning after your sleep as you wake up, can really help to revitalize the cells. There are a few other mineral solutions that I prescribe, something like Bio 77. It used to be called Concentrace, but even a combined tissue salts, Natura makes a tissue salt combine of 12 different tissue salts that dissolved in a jug of water, or a pinch of salt. So minerals are really important, and more so than before, because that can help to revitalize the cells. As far as ascension symptoms or disease go, I think the unfortunate thing is, but it's a reality, is that people have been unwell for so long people have been so depleted for so long, doing too much for so long. So they have become, if you think of a car and the four tires, that all four tires are flat, there's no fuel, the battery is flat, there's not enough oil. So with nutrition, I see it as just adding back those depleted elements. So before we even go into what is the diagnosis, is it ascension or is it disease, just think nutritionally, how can I work restoratively so that my cells can do what they naturally are designed to do, and that is repair. So, and we can start by adding minerals and perhaps adding nutrients. Too many people, unfortunately, don't know how to plan an optimal nutritional plan. So speak to somebody who knows, because there are some of you who might spend a lot of money on buying nutrients, but you feel no difference. Mm-hmm. So I use muscle testing for my clients, looking at how to find the best nutrient or product or brand, whether it's a B vitamin or an omega or a probiotic, that will add benefit.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is that not two people are the same. So, you know, very often, you know, big pharmaceutical companies will advertise, oh, a multivitamin for everyone. But the reality is that no two souls are the same and no two bodies are the same. So, you know, that is why I say that intuitively eating is going to serve you the best, because for one person, eating a plant-based diet will be beneficial, but for another, it would actually be highly unbeneficial. What's the word? So I always say you are your field of wisdom. So come back to yourself and get to know yourself and what you need, because ultimately you will eventually get to a point where you know what you need and what you don't need. But until you get to that point, absolutely find someone who is consciously practicing being able to assist, you know, for example, like yourself, someone who understands both the medical and the energetic perspectives of both sides of this, because until you know how to help yourself, it is difficult to get out of the mud that you're in. But I'm hoping that we've managed to share quite a few tools on how people can start to support themselves. And I would also say that your resonance is very important. If it does not resonate to you, to go and jump on a trampoline or to go for a run or whatever, don't do it. I spent many, many years doing many, many things and many, many routines for things that don't resonate. Just because, oh, well, everybody else is doing that, or this spiritual practitioner said I should, or, oh, this was recommended by so-and-so. Take advice from yourself. So if there's something that someone said and it resonates with you, you'll get that nice ping in your heart and you go, oh, I'm excited to try that. If someone tells you to go for a run and you would rather actually jump into a lake with concrete boots, then don't do it. Don't go for that run, because you're going to hate every single minute of it. You know, find what you enjoy, because ultimately anything that you do with enjoyment in high frequency, you're going to be able to sustain. Anything that you're doing at a low frequency because you got told to do it, you're not going to be able to sustain it. And the beautiful thing about shifting from low density into higher density is it becomes so addictive. It becomes the drug that you need every day. If you had said to me a year ago that I would enjoy doing yoga and breath work every day, I would have laughed at you and said, not a chance in heck. But the more that I started doing it, the more I realized the connection to myself was all that I desired every day. And it became so easy to incorporate that into a daily routine, because I want to, not because I have to, because I want to. And ultimately the beautiful thing is, out of that, it serves me well as well. So find what brings you joy, because that will ultimately, even before you've done it, if it brings you joy, it's going to raise your vibration. And that's ultimately what you want to do right now. And I just wanted to touch on what you were saying about the minerals. I know at an energetic level, when you are doing energy integration, whether you're doing it consciously or not, you are working through all your minerals. So already we were depleted in minerals because of the soils and the way that food is produced, and because a lot of us are not topping up our minerals. But with the integration of energies into our cells, we're burning through it at a rapid rate.
Yeah.
So the depletion is a depletion on a depletion. So I would highly recommend supplementing with Himalaya salt or a trace mineral supplement that is beneficial. I would say, however, just look at the trace mineral supplements out there. A lot of them are laden with things like potassium sorbate and preservatives. And I was quite surprised when I was looking through a couple of them, how many of them are beneficial, sort of, but that they're laden also with preservatives, which just isn't great. So look at what you are supplementing with, because ultimately you don't want to waste money either. That makes no sense. And Emma, do you have anything else to add before we finish off? Because I know this has already been quite a long live.
Yeah, sorry. There's a few points that I would love to.
Sure.
I know we've gone over the time by quite a bit. The one thing in our physical component that I feel is really depleting people a lot and adding a lot of stress is our constant exposure to Wi-Fi, cell phones, 3G, 5G, you name it. It's just a constant exposure. So if we can't change that, we can't go and all live on top of the hill. But just small things that we can perhaps try just to reduce our exposure. The first thing I always tell clients is to please switch their Wi-Fi off at night.
Yeah.
So don't sleep with your Wi-Fi on. And then on your phone, switch off your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi connection. If possible, sleep without your phone next to your bed. And then there's a wonderful natural mineral stone called shungite. And shungite is really beneficial for us to have near you, to carry in your handbag, in your pocket. I even put it into my water, really helping us just to reduce the impact of all the radiation in our environment that is coming at us from all angles. So sometimes we can increase our nutrition, improve our nutrition, but we've also got to look at the toxic burden and how that impacts on us, and then find ways to just minimize or reduce that exposure. So shungite, most mineral shops have it, read up about it. For me, it's an absolute must-have with all the minerals that I've suggested as well.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you touched on that, actually, because, you know, very often this can become quite an overwhelming process, because a lot of people come into my practice and say, I can't fix it all. You know, if I'm working on myself, that's all good and well, but my environment is this, and I'm not in charge of the people around me, and they're low energy. At the end of the day, the biggest thing is about coming into your presence, into your body, and that is enough, actually. So if you are really, really, really struggling to look at your diet, to look at your environment, fix everything that's going on outside of you, the best thing that you can do is come into your physical body. So into presence, into your God spark, because ultimately when you are connected to your divinity and you're connected to source in your God spark, which is every single one of us has the cell within us, which is pure God source creator consciousness. And when we do breath work and we take the time to sit in presence, which we'll go into a lot more in our spiritual chamber, you have everything you need in that moment. So if you need to be grounded, come into presence. If you need healing, come into presence. If you want to mitigate and be a ripple of light into EMF protection around you, come into presence. So very often when I'm feeling like I don't want to do anything, I will come into presence, and I will trust that when I'm in presence, I'm grounding, I'm healing, and I'm also being a consciousness ripple that any EMF around me is not even going to affect me. So for those people that are just getting so overwhelmed about the to-do list of, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, and I need to do this, sometimes the best place to come back into is just yourself. Until you have the capacity to go, okay, I'm at a point where I can add in a few more bits and pieces, even if that means in my resources, what I have available to me right now is planting mother-in-law's tongue around my house. I can do that. I've got it in my garden. I'm going to propagate it. I'm going to plant it. You know, if you don't necessarily have the resources available to go and find shungite, which I know is so easily available and it's not expensive, But if you're a gardener and gardening is what resonates with you, then that might be what you want to do. Or if you are really lazy and you honestly don't want to remember taking trace minerals or working with shungite, then looking at things like the Blue Shield device, which you plug in and it works whilst you have electricity. Obviously in South Africa that's a bit more difficult, but that creates a, I think it's a 40-kilometer shield from EMF, and there's actually, they go up. So you've got the simpler one, you've got the more advanced one, and that you just plug in, and then you don't have to worry about EMF. So I try to also encourage people to look at what you can do to completely mitigate the risk. So for me, before the Blue Shield device, it was the shungite, the orgonite, the physical energy protection around myself energetically, but it was a lot to do when all you want to do is protect yourself from EMF. So obviously we've got the Blue Shield now, and we still turn off our Wi-Fi. I still use shungite and orgonite because you can never be too protected. But for people that don't have the time or the energy, then there are things that you can do that are easier than other things, you know. So take what resonates and don't overcomplicate it, and know that your intention is enough. You know, you don't have to now have the entire EMF protection list and go, okay, now I'm okay. You know, your intention is enough. If you want to be protected by EMF and you put that intention out into your energy field, you'll be amazed at how protected you become. So for me, I also make sure that when I'm out in public, I also make sure that I'm protected not only from other people's energies, but also from EMF. So some people might carry shungite with them. Other people might get the portable Blue Shield device. Other people might just do it completely energetically. So whatever works for you needs to be what you do, because then you hold it authentically. There is no point in holding shungite and going, I don't really think this works, but someone told me to take it with me and I'll be fine. You know, you've got to have intention, and you've got to have integrity and authenticity with these things, because otherwise you're just conning yourself into believing something that you don't hold as a truth to you. So these are all really beautiful ways of protecting yourself, and EMF is honestly huge. I mean, I know from experience, EMF poisoning in terms of exacerbated autistic symptoms in my my one child, headaches and migraines, disrupted sleep, nausea. It is horrible. So if you can turn off your Wi-Fi at the very least, then I would say please do it, because you'll be amazed at how quickly you start to feel better just by doing that.
And if I can just, sorry to interrupt,
no,
there's one thing that I think is the simplest of it all. Hand on the heart, hand on the belly, and just thank you, body. Thank you, body, for holding me. Thank you, body, for carrying me. Thank you, body, for walking me through this lifetime. So that can be such a simple place to start.
Yeah.
And even just in that breath, exhaling into the earth, discharging all the anxiety, all the fear, all the whatever else. Thank you, body. And just imagine that you're exhaling into the earth, that you're discharging. For me, even swimming in the sea, just imagine that I'm discharging all the EMF. Yeah, so it can be simple ways sometimes of just how much have I absorbed in the last 24 hours, and can I sit on the lawn, walk on the beach, walk on the soil, and just discharge that, so that the earth can help me to just minimize any compromise.
Absolutely. We forget how supported we are. We are held not only within our physical selves, with our embodied divinity, but we're held by all that is around us. You know, our galactic families, Gaia herself. So, you know, sometimes I think that I often walk in this life above what I feel is EMF poisoning, above what I feel is low density nourishment, because when you don't align to living a life where you are scared of all those things, you can actually raise your frequency enough that it cannot affect your physical body. So when I say come into presence and raise your frequency from the inside out, you do start to be completely out of alignment with things like EMF, water being not as nutrient dense as it should be and stuff like that, because your natural body vibration, your natural soul vibration allows you to absorb only that which is for your highest good. So very often I love to see that God spark just rippling out around me. And when I'm walking, I'm in this bubble of absolute protection. But that in itself is just coming back to a connection with yourself. Until you have embodied your divinity and you're able to do that, then obviously all of the other practical things are very important to do, because a lot of people don't yet know what that divine connection to self is yet. So until you know that and you can practice at that level, you do need to put other protections in place. Absolutely. And I like what Shirley said about gratitude as superpower. Absolutely. Absolutely. Gratitude is a go-to must every single day, because that gratitude obviously aligns with abundance, and an abundance of everything, you know. So that is incredible. So I know that our next series is going to be on Tuesday again, so a week today, which will be the 20th of June, if I'm not mistaken, at 9. And we are going to be speaking about the mental chamber, I think, Emma. Yeah, we've done the physical, so I think we're doing the mental chamber next, which is going to be super exciting. And I think we're going to be just touching on a little bit more of mental health, mental awareness, mental support, in a world where mental health has become a really important part of people's lives. And there's a lot more awareness around it now, which is incredible, and how you can support yourself best with that. And yeah, I just want to see if we've got any questions. Let me have a quick squiz here. Thank you for all of your comments, guys. Oh yeah, Shirley, Shungite is so wonderful. It is amazing. Okay, cool. No, I don't see any questions at the moment, so that's great. But otherwise, we will be seeing you guys on Tuesday at 9, and we'll obviously do a reminder. And if you do have any questions, you're welcome to bring them along. If it's about anything that we've already spoken about or anything that we are going to be speaking about, we'd love to hear back from you. And Emma, do you have anything else to add before we end off?
Perhaps that I am doing a facilitated fast next week from Monday until the 23rd. So if any of you would like to join a 3 to 5 day fast, you can maybe just have a look at my feed on Instagram and send me an email for the guidelines. And then I'm also going to be doing a solstice meditation on the 21st, and just bringing in all the beautiful vibrations that are out there at the moment, and helping us to support the intentions that we are setting for the next few months. So it's a powerful week to fast, and I think the planets are really informing a lot of our sort of thinking, feeling, and being at the moment. So I'd like to anchor that into something.
Fantastic, Emma. Yeah, I would highly recommend joining. I've done a 3-day fast with Emma before, and it was amazing to be held in a container of support. And you know, sometimes doing it in a group is just easier than doing it by yourself, and you can have the space to share your experience and know that other people are going through something similar. And it is just the most powerful experience to do a fast like that, definitely during an energetically exciting week, like solstice week. So if you are interested, go check out Emma's Instagram page. All the details are there. I'll also share it to my page. And until Tuesday next week, we will be seeing you all soon. Thanks, Emma. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.